There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission.
So, it seemed like such a long time ago, but here was one of my very first psionic arrays. And this is the one I reference in the podcast with the face and the orgonite. What was really big about this was the MOC, which is the magnetic orgon concentration chamber on the top. Then there was this period of time where there was sort of an interim lull in my research. So, Dr. Radionik is also an alchemist, so I was producing alcohol in my kitchen. I was able to produce about 95 to 98% pure, and I manufactured all of my 7 essentials for each day of the week. Then our adventures in bread yeast, which they smell god-awful, and it takes a very long time to distill that smell out of them. Trust me, it's something you don't want to experience. And, initially I didn't really know about bioins very much, and as I was reading Reich's work, I was becoming increasingly fascinated and starting to notice a lot of things in my own yeast samples that, from what I had been researching, just didn't seem consistent with the biological model of yeast or bacteria, because, you have to rule things out as well. Like, you can't just accept everything as is and say, oh, this is a bion, because it is. And here's the cool close-up of the yeast cell budding in multiple directions. And I developed better techniques for culturing too. This is one of my favorite yeast setups. Growing it in the water medium, it had the best results too. It had a thermometer in the water, and the water was controlled by an aquarium heater with a light overhead. Yeah, the Neptunium based generator device. This was a huge leap forward for Lab 5. After I discovered that bioins were sort of adaptogenic, and they actually mimic the energetic surroundings that they're put in. I did this with slides, and I used some magnets near it. Actually happened kind of by accident, and I was able to notice that the bioins' light emissions would change depending on the energy source that was placed near it. So naturally I went and got my smoke detector, and I built a piece of archimite. At that point it was dragonite, with a little bit of Neptunium in it, and wow, what a difference. As I went along, my microscope capabilities got better. Here's a really good sample of a yeast cell with bion clustering around it. That's that bright blue aspect you see. Then of course I went back to my arrays and started making subtle improvements to it here and there, and eventually psionics got to be sort of a thing of the past, because I was able to start making machines that didn't even rely on the mind, but started using radio waves. And then there was this particular experiment where I created a mutated strain of snowflake yeast. It was multicellular when I was done, and I eventually managed to do it again in record time. But the interesting part was the mutation, and when I observed that under the microscope, it was really cool. But as I was passing along, I took a lot of pictures. And it was a bit of a shock to see an eyeball staring back at me from my own specimen that I had made. Well, this has been Dr. Radionik with our CONNECTIVISION experience on YouTube. So we hope that if you watch this first, you go and check out our podcast. And if you've already checked out our podcast, please like and subscribe to support our efforts here at Lab 5 to keep educating the public on radioergonomy. Thank you personally from Dr. Radionik in Lab 5. Dr. Radionik, out.